When Callie arrives at Silverwind Ranch, she's only looking for quiet work and healing. But sparks fly with Weston Blackwell, and when powerful developers threaten the land they both love, she'll have to choose, run again, or fight for the life and love she never expected to find. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun beat down on Callie Monroe as she drove her dusty blue pickup truck down the long gravel driveway of Silverwind Ranch. Sweat beaded on her forehead, despite the air conditioning that worked only half the time. She glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her shoulder-length brown hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her face was free of makeup. At 36, she didn't care much about appearances anymore. "This is it," she muttered to herself. A fresh start. The ranch spread out before her, vast and beautiful. Rolling green hills dotted with horses, wooden fences stretched as far as she could see, and in the distance, a large white farmhouse gleamed in the sunlight. Several smaller buildings and barns were scattered across the property. Callie parked near what looked like the main barn and grabbed her worn resume from the passenger seat. She hadn't applied for a job in person in years, but the ad in the local paper had specifically requested an in-person interview. The position was simple: caring for the ranch's chickens and helping with odd jobs around the property. Room and board included. It was perfect for someone like her, someone running from a past and needing a quiet place to hide and heal. As she stepped out of her truck, a tall figure emerged from the barn. Callie's breath caught in her throat. The man walking toward her was striking, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-kissed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. He wore a simple flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms, well-worn jeans, and boots covered in what appeared to be fresh mud. "You must be Callie," he said, his voice deep with a soft drawl that immediately made her heart skip a beat. He extended his hand. "I'm Weston Blackwell." Callie shook his hand, noting his firm grip. "Nice to meet you. I'm here about the chicken keeper position." Weston smiled, and Callie couldn't help but notice how his eyes crinkled at the corners. "Right on time. Let me show you around." As they walked toward a large chicken coop in the distance, Callie took in the ranch's operations. Everything seemed well-maintained but not flashy. Workers moved about with purpose, tending to horses and mending fences. "So the job's pretty straightforward," Weston explained as they approached the coop. "Feed the chickens twice a day, collect eggs, keep their area clean, and make sure they're healthy. We've got about 50 hens right now. You ever worked with chickens before?" Callie nodded. "My grandparents had a small farm when I was growing up. I spent summers helping out." Weston opened the door to the coop, and the familiar smell of feed and chickens brought back memories of simpler times. Chickens scattered and clucked as they entered. "They seem agitated," Callie observed. "When was the last time someone deep cleaned in here?" Weston raised an eyebrow. "You got a good eye. Our last helper left suddenly about 2 weeks ago. We've been managing, but not as thoroughly as needed." Callie bent down, picked up a handful of feed, and scattered it. The chickens immediately rushed toward her, clucking happily. "Your feed bins are inefficient," she said bluntly. "You're losing a lot to spillage and probably mice." Instead of being offended, Weston laughed. "Most people come in trying to impress me with how qualified they are. You come in and tell me what I'm doing wrong." Callie felt her cheeks flush. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" No, Weston interrupted with a wave of his hand. "I appreciate honesty. If you see something that can be improved, I want to hear it." They spent the next hour touring the chicken operation. Callie pointed out several issues and offered simple solutions. Weston listened attentively, occasionally jotting notes in a small notebook he pulled from his pocket. "The cottage where you'd stay is just over that hill," Weston said, pointing toward a small rise beyond the chicken coop. "It's not fancy, but it's clean and all yours. Room, board, and a salary of $500 a week. What do you think?" Callie couldn't believe her luck. This was exactly what she needed. A place far from Chicago, far from the memories of her ex-husband's betrayal, far from the sister who had stolen her savings and her trust. A place where she could be alone with chickens that didn't ask questions or make demands. "When can I start?" she asked. Weston grinned. "How about now? Your cottage is ready, and these ladies," he gestured to the chickens, have been waiting for someone who understands them. That evening, Callie sat on the small porch of her cottage, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The cottage was simple but charming. One bedroom, a small kitchen and living area, and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub that made her smile. It was furnished with comfortable, well-used pieces that felt homey rather than worn. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Weston stood there with a basket covered with a checkered cloth. "Thought you might be too tired to cook tonight," he said, holding out the basket. "Just some simple dinner. Roast chicken, potatoes, and fresh bread from Mrs. Jenkins, our cook at the main house." Callie accepted the basket, touched by the thoughtfulness. "Thank you, that's very kind." "It's nothing," Weston shrugged. "We take care of our own here at Silverwind." Their eyes met for a moment too long, and Callie felt that strange flutter in her chest again. She quickly looked away. "Well, I'll let you get settled," Weston said, stepping back. "Morning comes early on a ranch. Breakfast is at 6 in the kitchen behind the main house if you want to join us, or you can cook here. Your choice." After he left, Callie unpacked her meager belongings. The box of thrifted clothes, a few books, and a small wooden box containing the only jewelry she'd kept after selling most of her possessions to pay off the debts her ex-husband had left her with. The cottage quickly felt like more of a home than her apartment in Chicago ever had. Days fell into a comfortable routine. Callie woke before dawn, fed the chickens, collected eggs, and spent her mornings cleaning and caring for the coop. In the afternoons, she helped with other tasks around the ranch, mending fences, organizing supply cabins, or helping in the vegetable garden that supplied the ranch's kitchen. She often worked alongside Weston, who, despite being the owner, wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. He moved with the same ease whether he was fixing a tractor or calming a nervous horse. Callie found herself watching him when she thought he wasn't looking, admiring his quiet confidence and the way he treated everyone, from the stable hands to the cook, with equal respect. A week into her stay, while cleaning out the feed storage, Callie was startled by Weston's voice behind her. "You talk to them," he said, leaning against the doorframe. Callie turned, confused. "Talk to who?" "The chickens," Weston replied with a smile. "I've heard you. You have conversations with them." Callie felt her face heat up with embarrassment. "They're good listeners," she said defensively. Instead of teasing her, Weston nodded. "I talk to my horses. Animals don't judge, don't have ulterior motives. Sometimes they're better company than people." Something in his tone made Callie wonder if he'd been hurt too. "Exactly," she agreed softly. "Some of us are heading into town for supplies," Weston said, changing the subject. "I want to come along. You've been working hard. Could do with a break." Callie hesitated. She'd been avoiding town, avoiding people and questions, but the thought of spending more time with Weston was tempting. "I should finish here," she began. "The feed will still be here tomorrow," Weston countered. "Come on. I'll even buy you lunch at May's Diner, best pie in the county." His smile was impossible to resist. "All right," she conceded, "but I need to shower first." In town, Callie felt strangely at ease walking alongside Weston as they visited the feed store, hardware shop, and local grocery. He introduced her simply as our new chicken expert, and no one pressed for details about her past. At May's Diner, they sat in a corner booth with Frank, the ranch's oldest hand, and Maria, who managed the stables. The conversation flowed easily, with stories about ranch life and local gossip that didn't require Callie's input but didn't exclude her either. "So, city girl," Frank said between bites of his burger. "You settling in all right at Silverwind?" Callie nodded. "It's peaceful. I like it." "You've made a big difference already," Weston said, his eyes warm as they met hers. "Egg production is up nearly 20% since you reorganized the coop." "Those chickens were just waiting for someone to understand their needs," Callie replied with a small smile. As promised, the pie was delicious, sweet cherry filling in a perfectly flaky crust. Callie couldn't remember the last time she'd enjoyed a simple pleasure like this. When the bill came, Weston insisted on paying for everyone. Back at the ranch, as Weston helped Callie unload supplies for the coop, their hands brushed. A jolt of electricity shot through Callie and she quickly pulled away. Thanks for today, she said, taking a step back. It was nice to get out. Weston studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. You're running from something, aren't you? He asked quietly. Callie stiffened. We all have pasts. Fair enough, he replied. Just know that whatever it is, you're safe here. That night, Callie couldn't sleep. Weston's kindness confused her. She'd built walls around her heart after discovering her ex-husband's affair with her sister, a betrayal that had shattered her trust in people. And yet, Weston had slipped past her defenses without even trying. The next morning, during her usual rounds, she found Weston at the chicken coop, installing new feed bins. The exact type she had mentioned would be more efficient. You didn't have to do this, she said, surprised. Weston glanced up from his work. You were right, these will work better. But they must have been expensive and… Callie, he interrupted gently, good ideas deserve to be implemented. Simple as that. They worked side by side that day, reorganizing the coop with the new bins. Their conversation was easy, punctuated by comfortable silences. By afternoon, they were covered in dust and chicken feathers, but smiling with satisfaction at the improvements. I'd say this calls for a celebration, Weston announced as they finished. Come to dinner at the main house tonight? Mrs. Jenkins is making her famous fried chicken. Callie had avoided the main house so far, preferring the solitude of her cottage. But Weston's invitation was tempting. Will there be many people? She asked hesitantly. Weston shook his head. Just us and maybe Frank, nothing formal. Then yes, she agreed. I'd like that. That evening, Callie took extra care with her appearance, washing the dust from her hair and putting on one of her nicer second-hand outfits, a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes. She felt a flutter of nervousness as she approached the main house, which was larger and more elegant than she'd expected for a working ranch. Weston met her at the door, his usual work clothes replaced by clean jeans and a button-down shirt that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. You look nice, he said, his eyes appreciative but respectful. So do you, she replied, trying to ignore the warmth spreading through her chest at his compliment. The interior of the house surprised her. It was beautifully furnished but not ostentatious, with comfortable leather sofas, original artwork on the walls and large windows overlooking the ranch. It spoke of wealth but not flash, of someone with good taste and the means to indulge it. Mrs. Jenkins served a delicious meal at a table set with fine china and crystal glasses. Frank joined them, regaling Callie with stories of the ranch's early days. As the evening wore on, Callie found herself laughing more than she had in months. After dinner, Weston showed her around the house, ending in a large library filled with books from floor to ceiling. This is amazing, Callie breathed, running, her fingers along the spines. Have you read all these? Weston nodded. Most of them. Reading was my escape growing up. Mine too, Callie admitted. My parents fought a lot. Books were safer than real life. It was the first personal detail she'd shared, and Weston seemed to recognize its significance. He didn't push for more. Feel free to borrow anything that catches your eye, he offered instead. As the evening came to an end, Weston walked Callie back to her cottage. The night was warm, stars twinkling overhead, and the only sounds were their footsteps on the gravel path and the distant nickering of horses. At her door they paused, an awkward moment hanging between them. Thank you for tonight, Callie said softly. It was lovely. Weston took a step closer. Callie, But whatever he was about to say was interrupted by the ringing of his cell phone. He frowned, pulling it from his pocket and checking the screen. Sorry, I have to take this, he said apologetically. Business call. I'll see you tomorrow? Callie nodded, a mixture of relief and disappointment flooding through her as she watched him walk away, phone pressed to his ear. What had he been about to say? And why did the thought both thrill and terrify her? She entered her cottage and leaned against the closed door, her heart racing. This wasn't part of the plan. She'd come to Silverwind for a job, not for feelings she wasn't ready to face, not for a man who made her want to lower her carefully constructed defenses. As she prepared for bed, Callie made a resolution: keep her head down, do her job, and guard her heart. No matter how charming Weston Blackwell might be, she couldn't risk being hurt again. But as she drifted off to sleep, his smile lingered in her mind, and she wondered if some risks might be worth taking after all. 2 weeks passed, and Callie settled deeper into life at Silverwind Ranch. The routine brought comfort. Mornings with her chickens, afternoons helping around the property, and evenings alone in her cottage with books borrowed from Weston's library. She convinced herself that the peaceful simplicity was all she needed, but her heart betrayed her whenever Weston was near. Their paths crossed daily, and each encounter left her more drawn to him than before. His easy laugh, the way he remembered how she liked her coffee, the respect he showed everyone who worked for him, all of it chipped away at the walls she'd built. One Tuesday morning, Callie was cleaning the chicken coop when she heard the rumble of an expensive car coming up the driveway. She glanced out to see a sleek black Mercedes stopping in front of the main house. A woman stepped out, tall, blonde, and dressed in clothes that probably cost more than Callie's truck. Weston emerged from the house to greet her. The woman threw her arms around his neck and kissed his cheek. Even from a distance, Callie could see how perfectly they matched. Both beautiful, polished, belonging to a world Callie had never been part of. "That's Vanessa Winters," said a voice. Behind her, Callie turned to find Maria, the stable manager, watching the scene with a knowing look. "She and Weston dated on and off for years," Maria continued. "Her daddy owns the biggest cattle operation in the next county. Everyone always figured they'd end up together eventually." Callie felt something cold settle in her stomach. "They look good together," she managed to say, her voice deliberately casual. Maria shrugged. "Looks aren't everything. But yeah, they run in the same circles." All day, Callie avoided the main house, focusing intently on her work. But her mind kept returning to the image of Weston and Vanessa together. A matching set, like something from a glossy magazine. That evening, as Callie was heading back to her cottage, Weston appeared on the path, walking toward her with purpose. In his stride, "You disappeared today," he said, stopping in front of her. Callie shrugged. "Busy day, lot of work with the chickens." Weston studied her face. "I wanted to introduce you to my visitor, but I couldn't find you." "I saw you had company," Callie replied, unable to keep a hint of coolness from her voice. "Didn't want to interrupt." "Vanessa?" Weston raised an eyebrow. "She's not company. She stopped by about the charity auction next month. Silverwind donates riding lessons every year." Callie felt foolish, but couldn't quite shake the image of Vanessa's perfectly manicured hand on Weston's arm. "You don't owe me any explanations." No, I don't," he said quietly, "but I wanted to give them anyway." Their eyes met and something unspoken passed between them. Callie looked away first. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Weston continued. "There's a horse show in Mason Creek this weekend. Thought you might like to go. Could be a nice break from the ranch." The invitation surprised her. "Like, together?" Weston's smile was warm. That was the idea, yes. It felt dangerously close to a date. Part of Callie wanted to say yes immediately, but the cautious part, the part still raw from betrayal, held her back. "I don't know," she hedged. "I was planning to deep clean the nesting boxes this weekend." "The chickens can spare you for one day," Weston countered, his eyes twinkling. "Besides, I've seen how hard you work. You deserve some fun." Fun? When was the last time she'd prioritized that? Before her marriage fell apart, certainly. Before she discovered her husband's affair with her sister. Before her world collapsed. "All right," she agreed finally. "But just for the day." Weston's face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. "Great." "It's a date," he caught himself. "I mean, not a date, just a... You know what, let's just call it an outing between friends." His slight fluster was endearing, and Callie found herself smiling too. An outing between friends sounds perfect. Saturday dawned clear and warm. Callie spent more time than usual deciding what to wear, finally settling on her best jeans and a cornflower blue blouse that brought out her eyes. She tied her hair back with a ribbon, applied a touch of mascara, and felt like a different woman than the one who'd arrived at Silverwind with nothing but thrift store clothes and a broken heart. Weston waited beside his truck. Not the work truck she usually saw him in, but a newer model that gleamed in the morning sun. He wore dark jeans and a crisp white shirt that contrasted with his tanned skin. When he saw her approaching, His face brightened in a way that made her feel beautiful. "You look nice," he said simply. "So do you," she replied, and meant it. The drive to Mason Creek took about an hour, through rolling hills and past sprawling ranches. Conversation flowed easily between them, touching on books they'd both read, Weston's plans for breeding horses next season, and Callie's ideas for expanding the chicken operation. What they didn't discuss was anything personal. Callie offered no details about her past, and Weston didn't push. It was as if they both understood the fragility of whatever was building between them. The horse show was held at the county fairgrounds, a bustling scene of trailers, horses, and spectators. Weston seemed to know everyone, introducing Callie again and again as Silverwind's chicken expert. People clearly respected him, and more than one person looked curiously at Callie, as if wondering who she was to be in Weston Blackwell's company. "You're quite popular," she observed as they found seats in the viewing stands. Weston shrugged. "Small community. Everyone knows everyone. And everyone's interested in your business," she added, noticing the speculative glances cast their way. "Let them wonder," he said, his hand briefly touching hers on the bench between them. "I stopped caring what people think a long time ago." The competition began, with riders of all ages showing their horses in various categories. Weston explained the nuances of each event, his knowledge impressive. When a young girl on a small pony completed a perfect round, he cheered louder than anyone. "My Panice," he explained. "Emma's been practicing for months." After the show, they visited the food stalls, eating corn dogs and cotton candy like teenagers. Callie couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed so much. For a few hours, she forgot about her past, forgot about the differences between them, and simply enjoyed being with a man who made her feel alive again. As afternoon turned to evening, they wandered through the small carnival that accompanied the show. On impulse, Weston tugged her toward the Ferris wheel. "I haven't been on one of these since I was a kid," Callie protested weakly. "Then you're long overdue," Weston replied, already buying tickets. At the top of the wheel, with the countryside spread out around them and the first stars appearing in the twilight sky, time seemed to stand still. They sat close, shoulders touching, neither speaking for a moment. "Thank you for today," Callie said softly. "I needed this." Weston turned to look at her, his eyes serious. "I've enjoyed watching you come alive today, Callie. You don't smile enough." "Haven't had much reason to lately," she admitted. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. "Maybe we can change that." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Callie felt herself leaning toward him, drawn by something stronger than her fears. Weston's free hand came up to touch her cheek, his eyes asking a question. Her answer was to close the distance between them, their lips meeting in a kiss that was gentle at first, then deepening with a hunger that surprised them both. When they finally drew apart, Callie's heart was racing, and Weston looked as dazed as she felt. "I've been wanting to do that since you told me my feed bins were inefficient," he confessed with a small laugh. "I've been wanting you to," she whispered back. The rest of the evening passed in a glow. They held hands as they walked around the fairgrounds, stopped for longer kisses in shadowy corners, and talked more openly than before, though still carefully avoiding the deeper wounds of the past. On the drive home, Weston kept one hand on the wheel and the other holding Callie's. The silence between them was comfortable now, filled with unspoken possibilities. At her cottage door they kissed again, longer this time, his arms wrapped around her waist, her hands in his hair. It would have been easy to invite him in, to let the heat building between them carry them away. But Callie pulled back, breathless. "I should go in," she said, her voice husky. "Early start tomorrow." Weston nodded, understanding in his eyes. "We've got time," he assured her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. No need to rush anything. His patience only made her want him more, but she was grateful for it too. Whatever was happening between them deserved care and time to grow. The next morning, Callie woke with a smile on her face for the first time in longer than she could remember. The day seemed brighter, the air sweeter, even the chickens clucking, more musical. She was humming as she collected eggs, her mind replaying every moment of the previous day. "Someone's in a good mood," said Frank, the old ranch hand, as he passed the coop. Wouldn't have anything to do with a certain boss man, would it? Callie felt herself blush. Maybe. Frank's weathered face creased in a smile. About time. That boy needs someone to remind him there's more to life than work. It's not serious, Callie protested. We're just getting to know each other. Sure, Frank chuckled, walking away. That's how it always starts. Around midday, Weston found her in the feed shed taking inventory. His smile when he saw her made her heart flip. I was thinking, he said, casually leaning against the doorframe, that maybe you'd like to have dinner with me tonight. Just the two of us. I could cook at my place. The thought of being alone with him, away from curious eyes, sent a thrill through her. You cook? Don't sound so surprised, he laughed. Bachelor living has its advantages. I make a mean steak. I'd like that, she agreed. 7 o'clock? I'll come get you. The rest of the day crawled by. Callie changed her outfit 3 times before settling on a simple sundress and sandals. Her hair she left loose around her shoulders, the way he seemed to like it. Weston arrived precisely at 7, looking handsome in dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt that matched his eyes. He led her not to the main house as she expected, but to a smaller house set apart from the others, closer to the stables. This is my actual home, he explained, opening the door for her. The big house is mostly for business meetings and guests. His home surprised her, warm and masculine with comfortable leather furniture, shelves filled with books and horse figurines, and large windows overlooking the ranch. It was lived in and unpretentious, much like Weston himself. It's lovely, she said honestly. Very you. He smiled, pleased by her approval. Make yourself comfortable. Wine? They moved easily around each other in the kitchen as he grilled steaks, and she prepared the salad he'd already started. It felt domestic and right, as if they'd done this 100 times before. Over dinner, conversation flowed from ranch business to books to dreams neither had shared with many people. Weston talked about his hopes for Silverwind, the legacy he wanted to build. Callie shared her love of animals and how she'd once dreamed of veterinary school before her marriage derailed those plans. It's not too late, Weston said, refilling her wine glass. You're smart, dedicated, you could still do it. His belief in her in possibilities she'd long abandoned touched something deep within her. Maybe someday, she said softly. After dinner they moved to the couch, the space between them disappearing as Weston pulled her close. Their kisses grew more heated, hands exploring with increasing boldness. When he whispered her name against her neck, Callie felt herself surrendering to the moment, to the feelings she'd been fighting since the day they met. But as his hand slipped under the hem of her dress, a flash of panic seized her. Images of her ex-husband, of finding him with her sister, of the humiliation and betrayal. It all came rushing back. Wait, she gasped, pulling away. I can't. I'm sorry. Weston immediately stopped, concern in his eyes. Callie, what's wrong? She shook her head, unable to explain the fear choking her. I should go, I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize, he said gently. We can slow down or just talk, whatever you need. His kindness nearly broke her. I'm not ready for this, she managed to say. For any of it. I thought I was, but I'm not. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Someone hurt you. It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway, tears threatening. Badly. Weston didn't push for details. Instead, he simply took her hand, his thumb rubbing soothing circles on her palm. Then we take all the time you need. Or none at all if that's what you want. I don't know what I want, she admitted, except that I don't want to hurt you. You won't, he assured her. Whatever happened before, it doesn't change how I feel about you, Callie. You're strong and kind and honest. The rest we can figure out together, if you're willing. They sat. In silence for a moment, hands still linked. Finally, Callie spoke, her voice small but steady. My husband cheated on me, she said. With my sister. The words hung in the air between them, painful but somehow relieving to finally speak aloud. Weston's hand tightened on hers. I'm sorry, he said simply. It gets worse, she continued, the dam finally breaking. I didn't just lose my marriage, I lost everything. David, my ex, had been managing our finances. When I filed for divorce, I discovered he'd emptied our accounts, maxed out credit cards in my name, and my sister Karen, who I'd trusted with my share of our parents' life insurance money. She helped him hide it all. Weston's face darkened with anger, but he remained silent, letting her speak. I was left with nothing. No savings, mountains of debt, and a broken heart. I sold everything I could, worked 3 jobs to make minimum payments, and barely stayed afloat. This job, she gestured around them, it was my escape. A chance to disappear and start over. And now you're afraid to trust again, Weston concluded softly. Callie nodded, tears finally spilling over. I'm afraid to trust anyone, even you. Especially you. Because you're starting to care, he guessed. Yes, she whispered. And it terrifies me. Weston reached out, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. Fear means there's something worth protecting, he said. I'm not asking you to trust me completely. Not yet. Just enough to give us a chance. His words pierced straight to her heart. I want to, she admitted. I just don't know if I can. Then let me earn it, he said simply. Day by day. When he drove her back to her cottage later that night, he kissed her softly at the door, but didn't press for more. Sleep well, Callie, he said, and thank you for trusting me with your story. Alone in her bed, Callie replayed their conversation. She'd expected to feel more vulnerable after revealing her past, but instead she felt lighter. Weston knew the worst now, and he hadn't run away. Maybe, just maybe, she could learn to trust again. The next morning she found a small vase of wildflowers on her porch with a note. For the woman who talks to chickens. Dinner at my place tonight? No pressure, just food and conversation. W. She smiled, touching the colorful petals. Such a simple gesture, but it warmed her from the inside out. Maybe it was time to take a risk, to believe that not all men were like David, that not all relationships ended in betrayal. Later that afternoon, Callie was in the main barn, helping Maria organize supplies for an upcoming riding clinic, when the sound of raised voices drew their attention. Through the open door, they could see Weston standing with a well-dressed man holding a briefcase. The conversation looked tense. Who's that? Callie asked. Maria frowned. Looks like Brad Thompson from Horizon Development. They've been trying to buy land around here for months. Want to build some fancy resort or something? Callie watched. As Weston shook his head firmly, his stance unyielding, the man gestured expansively, clearly trying to convince him of something, then finally handed over what looked like a business card before driving away in an expensive SUV. When Weston entered, the barn moments later, his expression was troubled. Everything okay? Callie asked. He forced a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Just business, nothing important. But she could tell he was bothered by whatever the man had said. That evening at dinner, Weston seemed distracted. They ate on his back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. When Callie asked about the visitor, Weston sighed. Horizon Development wants to buy a large parcel of my land, the east pasture where the creek runs through. They're planning some luxury resort and golf course, offering way above market value. That sounds like good business, Callie said carefully. Weston shook his head. It's family land. My grandfather built this place from nothing. If I start selling it off in pieces... He trailed off, then looked at her intently. What would you do? The question surprised her. Me? I don't know anything about land development. But you have good instincts, he insisted. And you're not. Caught up in the emotions of it like I am. His trust in her judgment touched her deeply. What does the land mean to you? She asked. Weston considered this. It's more than just acres and trees, it's legacy, it's the future. My grandfather always said we don't really own the land. We're just its caretakers for the next generation. Then, I think you already know your answer, Callie said gently. He nodded, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Thank you. Sometimes I just need to hear myself say it out loud. As they cleared the dishes together, moving in easy synchrony around his kitchen, Callie felt a sense of rightness, of belonging. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not the absence of pain, but finding joy despite it. When Weston kissed her goodnight, there was a new tenderness in his touch, a promise of patience and understanding. Callie let herself lean into him, into the comfort and safety he offered. "Good night, chicken whisperer," he murmured against her hair. She laughed softly. "Good night, horseman." As she walked back to her cottage under a sky full of stars, Callie realized something had shifted within her. The walls she'd built weren't gone, but for the first time since her world had fallen apart, she was willing to let someone in. What she didn't know was that the biggest test of her newfound trust was just around the corner. The next few weeks at Silverwind Ranch brought a gentle rhythm to Callie's life. Mornings with her chickens, afternoons helping around the property, and evenings with Weston. They took things slowly, building trust in small moments, shared meals, sunset walks along the creek, and conversations that stretched late into the night. Callie found herself opening up more each day. She told him about her childhood on her grandparents' farm, her college years studying animal science, and her dreams of someday having a place of her own. Weston listened with genuine interest, never pushing for more than she was ready to share. In turn, he told her about growing up on Silverwind, about learning the business from his father and grandfather, about the responsibility he felt to preserve their legacy. What he didn't talk about was money. From his simple clothes to his unpretentious home, nothing about Weston suggested the wealth that must underpin an operation as large as Silverwind. It was something Callie appreciated, his lack of flash, his hands-in-the-dirt work ethic. It made him seem accessible, someone not so different from herself. One Saturday morning, Callie was surprised to find Frank at her door instead of Weston, who usually brought coffee before they started the days. "Well, boss man asked me to let you know he had to drive into the city for an emergency meeting," Frank explained. "Said to tell you he's sorry and he'll be back by dinner." Callie felt a pang of disappointment, but nodded. "Thanks, Frank." "Did he say what kind of meeting?" The old ranch hand shrugged. "Something about investors, I reckon. Happens a few times a year." The day stretched long without Weston. Callie threw herself into her work, deep cleaning the chicken coop and reorganizing the feed storage. By late afternoon, dark clouds were rolling in, bringing the scent of rain on the wind. As she was heading back to her cottage, Maria called out to her from the main house. "Callie, Mrs. Jenkins is looking for you. Something about eggs for tomorrow's breakfast." Sighing, Callie changed direction. She'd never been inside the main house alone before. Weston had always been with her. The imposing white building felt different without him, more formal and intimidating. She knocked on the kitchen door, but there was no answer. Hesitantly, she pushed it open. "Mrs. Jenkins," she called. Silence. The kitchen was empty, though signs of food preparation were evident, bowls and utensils on the counter, the oven humming with something that smelled delicious. Callie frowned. It wasn't like the efficient housekeeper to leave in the middle of cooking. She moved through the kitchen, thinking perhaps Mrs. Jenkins was in the pantry, when voices from the adjoining room caught her attention. "Final offer is 20 million, a male voice was saying. "The board won't go higher, even for you, Weston." Callie froze. 20 million, had she heard correctly? "It's not about the money, Richard, you know that," came Weston's voice, unmistakable even through the closed door. "Silverwind isn't just a business to me." "Which is exactly why you should consider it," the other man insisted. "This drought has hit everyone hard. Feed prices are through the roof. 3 more ranches in the county have sold this month alone, and unlike them, you'd be walking away with enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life." "I'm already living comfortably," Weston replied, a hint of amusement in his tone. The other man sighed audibly. "Fine. Play the humble rancher if you want. But we both know the Blackwell fortune isn't tied up just in horses. The family trust alone is worth—" Callie didn't hear the rest. She backed away from the door, her mind reeling. Fortune. Family. Trust. The pieces suddenly came together. The size of the ranch, the quality of everything from the barns to the breeding stock, the casual way Weston had installed new equipment based on her suggestions. Weston wasn't just well off. He was wealthy, very wealthy, and he'd never mentioned it once. Feeling like an intruder, Callie hurried back to the kitchen door. But as she reached for the handle, it swung open, revealing Weston and a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit. "Callie," Weston said, clearly surprised. I thought you'd be at the cottage by now." "Maria said Mrs. Jenkins needed eggs," she replied stiffly. "But she's not here." Weston looked confused. "Mrs. Jenkins left early today. Her daughter's having a baby." The realization that she'd been led into an awkward situation, accidentally or deliberately, didn't improve Callie's mood. She felt foolish and somehow betrayed, though she couldn't have explained exactly why. "I see," she said, her voice cooling. "I'll head back then." "Wait," Weston said, stepping forward. "Let me introduce you to Richard Wilson, my financial advisor." "Richard, this is Callie Monroe, our chicken keeper," Callie finished for him, her tone sharper than intended. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Wilson." The advisor's eyebrows rose slightly as he took in her work clothes and boots. "Likewise, Miss Monroe." An uncomfortable silence fell. Callie could feel Richard's assessing gaze, wondering perhaps what she was to Weston beyond an employee. She wondered the same thing herself now. "I should go," she said finally. "Those eggs won't collect themselves." Without waiting for a response, she pushed past them and out into the gathering storm. The first fat raindrops were falling as she hurried across the yard, matching the turmoil inside her. By the time she reached her cottage, rain was pouring down in sheets. Callie stood in her small living room, dripping onto the worn wooden floor, trying to make sense of what she'd learned. Weston was rich. Not just ranch owner comfortable, but millions rich. The kind of wealth she couldn't even imagine. And he'd kept it from her, let her believe he was a simple rancher like any other. Why? Was he testing her somehow? Seeing if she'd be interested in him without knowing about his money? The thought made her stomach churn. After what she'd been through with David, the idea of being manipulated again, of having information withheld that might affect her choices, it felt like a violation of the trust they'd been building. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She knew who it was before she opened it. Weston stood on her porch, soaked from the rain, his expression a mixture of concern and determination. "Can I come in?" he asked simply. Callie stepped back, letting him enter. Water dripped from his clothes, onto her floor, joining the puddle she'd created. "You're upset," he said, not a question. "You lied to me," she replied, the hurt in her voice unmistakable. Weston shook his head. "I never lied, Callie." "Lies of omission are still lies," she countered. "You let me think you were just a regular rancher. You never mentioned that you're—" "What? A millionaire, heir to some family fortune?" His face fell. "So you heard." "Enough," she confirmed. "Why, Weston? Why hide something like that from me? Especially after I opened up to you about my past." He ran a hand through his wet hair, sighing heavily. "I wasn't hiding it exactly. I didn't want it to be the first thing you knew about me." "Why? Not?" "Because it changes things," he said, frustration edging his voice. "It always does. People see the money before they see me. They want something. A donation, an investment, a lifestyle. When I realized you had no idea who I was or what I was worth, it was refreshing." Callie wrapped her arms around herself, chilled despite the warm evening. "You let me mop your barn floor while wearing a Rolex," she said, echoing the line from the conversation she'd overheard. "I let you be exactly who you are," he replied gently, "because I was falling for that woman, not the one I thought you might become if you knew." The echo of the conversation she'd just overheard startled her. "You were testing me." "No," he insisted, taking a step toward her. "I was protecting myself. After Vanessa left me when my father nearly bankrupted the ranch, after 3 relationships that ended when I wouldn't fund business ventures or luxury lifestyles, I became careful. Maybe too careful." Callie's anger wavered at the pain in his eyes. "You should have told me." "I know," he admitted. "I wanted to, especially after you shared your story. But the longer I waited, the harder it became. I was afraid of losing what we were building." "And what exactly is that, Weston?" she asked, her voice small. "What are we building?" He crossed the room to stand before her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him despite his wet clothes. "Something real," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Something that has nothing to do with money or status or anything except who we are together." Callie wanted to believe him. The sincerity in his voice, the vulnerability in his eyes, it all spoke to the man she'd come to care for deeply. but the echoes of past betrayal were loud in her head. "I need time," she said, finally, "to think about all this." Weston nodded, accepting her words, though she could see they hurt him. "I understand." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Callie, my feelings for you have been real from the start. The money doesn't change who I am, just what I can afford." After he left, Callie sat on her small couch listening to the rain pound against the roof. The cottage that had felt so cozy and welcoming now seemed shabby and small compared to the wealth Weston commanded. Was that how he saw it too? As charity for a broken woman? The thought stung, but she pushed it away. Weston had never treated her with anything but respect. He worked as hard as any of his employees, got his hands dirty, and seemed genuinely uncomfortable with Richard's mention of his fortune. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe he had simply wanted to be seen for himself, not his bank account. Hadn't she wanted the same thing after her divorce? To be valued for who she was, not judged by the mess her ex-husband had made of her life? Sleep eluded her that night, her mind churning with questions and doubts. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a washed-clean world and a decision in Callie's heart. She found Weston in the stables, checking on a mare who had recently foaled. He looked tired, as if he too had spent the night awake. "Can we talk?" she asked from the stall doorway. He nodded, following her outside to a bench under an old oak tree. They sat side by side, not touching, the morning sun dappling the ground. At their feet, "I've been thinking about what you said," Callie began, "about wanting to be seen for who you are, not what you have. I understand that, probably better than most." Weston remained silent, giving her space to continue. "My ex-husband controlled everything in our marriage, the money, the decisions, even how I saw myself. When I found out about him and my sister, I lost more than my marriage. I lost my sense of who I was." She took a deep breath. "I came to Silverwind to find that woman again, and somehow with you I have. You've seen me, really seen me from the beginning." "Because you're worth seeing," Weston said softly. Callie met his gaze. "So are you. The man I've gotten to know. These past weeks, the one who works alongside his people, who listens more than he talks, who remembers how I take my coffee. That's the real you. Whether you have millions or nothing, that man is who I'm falling for." Hope bloomed in Weston's eyes. "Does that mean you forgive me?" "It means I understand," she corrected gently. "But no more secrets, Weston. If we're going to do this, whatever this is, we need to be honest with each other. About everything." He took her hand, interlacing their fingers. "No more secrets," he promised. "Starting now. I, Weston Blackwell, am embarrassingly, ridiculously in love with you, Callie Monroe." The words stole her breath. "Weston, you don't have to say it back," he assured her quickly. "I know it's too soon. I just wanted you to know where I stand, completely honestly." Tears pricked at her eyes, but they were happy tears. She leaned forward, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home. "I'm not ready to say it yet," she whispered against his mouth, "but I'm getting closer every day." His smile was worth all the doubt and fear she'd battled through the night. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close as if she were something precious. For the first time in years, Callie felt like maybe she was. That evening, Weston invited her to dinner at his house again. This time the conversation flowed more freely, with no hidden barriers between them. He told her about growing up wealthy but isolated, about the pressure to live up to his family's name, about his father's risky investments that had nearly cost them everything when Weston was in his 20s. "That's when Vanessa left," he explained, pouring her more wine. "Right when things were at their worst. Said she hadn't signed up for a fixer-upper ranch or a boyfriend with financial problems." "Her loss," Callie said simply. Weston smiled. "Definitely. I rebuilt Silverwind from what was left, made it more successful than it had ever been. But I learned a hard lesson about who stuck around when times got tough. Like Frank, Callie, Gerst, Frank, Maria, a few others, the ones who cared about more than a paycheck." He looked at her intently. "People like you." The compliment warmed her. "I'm just doing my job." "We both know it's more than that," he said softly. "You care. About this place, about the animals, about the people. I do, she admitted. It feels like home now. Something shifted in Weston's expression, a deepening of emotion. I want it to be your home, Callie. Not just temporarily, not just as an employee. I want you to stay with me. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. It was too soon. For formal commitments, they both knew that. But the direction was clear, the intention set. They were building something lasting, something real. Instead of answering with words, Callie rose from her chair and moved around the table. She sat in his lap, winding her arms around his neck, and kissed him with all the emotion she wasn't ready to name. His arms tightened around her, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened, passion rising between them like a tide. This time, when his hands slipped beneath her clothes, Callie didn't pull away. The ghosts of her past seemed distant and powerless against the strength of what she felt for this man. They moved to his bedroom, where whispered words and gentle touches healed old wounds and created new memories to replace the painful ones. Later, lying in his arms with moonlight streaming through the windows, Callie felt a peace she'd thought was lost forever. Weston's breathing had evened into sleep, his face relaxed and vulnerable in a way that made her heart squeeze with tenderness. I love you too, she whispered, knowing he couldn't hear but needing to say the words aloud, testing how they felt. On her tongue, they felt right. The following weeks brought a new depth to their relationship. Callie still kept her cottage and her independence, but she spent most nights with Weston. The ranch hands observed the change with knowing smiles, but a respectful distance. Even Mrs. Jenkins, usually a stickler for propriety, seemed pleased by the development, going out of her way to prepare Callie's favorite foods when she joined Weston for meals at the main house. One morning in late summer, Callie was checking on a broody hen when Maria approached with an unusual request. Weston needs you at the main house, she said. Some official-looking folks are here to see him, and he asked for you specifically. Curious and slightly concerned, Callie made her way to the house. In the formal dining room, she found Weston seated at one end of the long table, facing three people in business attire. Maps and documents were spread across the polished surface. Callie, Weston said, his voice relieved. Come in. These people are from Horizon Development. They've made another offer for the East Pasture, and I wanted you to hear it. The surprise must have shown on her face. It was one thing for Weston to value her opinion in private, quite another to include her in a business meeting of this magnitude. One of the visitors, a sharp-featured woman in a grey suit, looked at Callie with poorly concealed disdain, clearly wondering what the chicken keeper had to do with multi-million-dollar land deals. Miss Monroe manages a portion of our livestock operation, Weston explained smoothly, pulling out the chair beside him, and she has a particular interest in the creek property. Callie sat, feeling distinctly out of place in her work clothes among these polished professionals, but Weston's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently in reassurance. As I was saying, continued the man at the head of the visiting group, we've increased our offer to $25 million, with guarantees that the development will include eco-friendly features and public access to parts of the creek. And the wildlife habitat, Weston asked. The man shuffled uncomfortably. We would preserve as much as possible, but some alteration would be necessary for the golf course. I see, Weston said neutrally. He turned to Callie. What are your thoughts? Put on the spot, Callie took a moment to gather her thoughts. The creek area is home to several species of birds that nest nowhere else on the property, she said slowly, and the natural spring that feeds into it provides the cleanest water source for miles. A development, even an eco-friendly one, would disrupt that ecosystem permanently. The woman in grey rolled her eyes slightly, but Weston nodded, his expression thoughtful. There's also the matter of precedent, Callie continued, gaining confidence. Once you sell one piece of Silverwind, where does it end? This land has been in your family for generations. It's not just acres and trees, it's legacy. Weston smiled, recognizing his own words from their earlier conversation. He turned back to the developers. I appreciate your offer, but my answer remains the same. Silverwind is not for sale, not in parts and not as a whole. The meeting concluded shortly after, with the developers leaving in barely concealed frustration. Once they were gone, Weston pulled Callie into his arms. Thank you, he said, kissing her forehead. "For reminding me what matters." "You didn't need reminding," she replied, smiling up at him. "You knew all along." "Maybe," he conceded, "but hearing you defend this land, knowing you care about it as much as I do, that means everything." The moment was interrupted by Frank bursting through the door, his weathered face taut with alarm. "Boss, fire in the lower pasture, moving fast with the wind." The word sent ice through Callie's veins. Wildfire was every rancher's nightmare, especially after the dry summer they'd had. "Alert everyone," Weston commanded instantly. "Get the horses to the north pasture. Maria knows the evacuation plan, and call the fire department." The next hours passed in a blur of smoke and fear. Weston organized the ranch hands with calm efficiency, but Callie could see the worry in his eyes. The fire was moving quickly toward the stables, and several horses were still unaccounted for. "I'm going back for them," Weston announced, mounting his horse. "It's too dangerous," Callie protested, grabbing his reins. He looked down at her, his face resolute. "I can't leave them, Callie. You know that." She did know. It was one of the things she loved most about him, his unwavering commitment to the animals in his care, the same commitment she felt toward her chickens, still in their coop near the advancing fire. "I'm going with you," she decided. "My chickens are down there too." Weston started to argue, then saw the determination in her eyes. "Stay close to me," he conceded. "And if I say run, you run. No arguments." They rode together toward the smoke, the heat intensifying as they approached the fire line. Callie's eyes stung, her lungs burning with each breath. But she pressed on, following Weston to the stables where frightened whinnies could be heard over the roar of the flames. Working as a team, they managed to lead the remaining horses to safety, guiding them along the creek, where the ground was too damp for the fire to cross easily. As they emerged from the smoke, coughing and soot-covered, Maria ran to take the horses. "The chickens," Callie gasped, already turning back. "Callie, no!" Weston grabbed her arm. "The fire's too close now." She pulled away. "I can't leave them." Before he could stop her, she was running toward the chicken coop, keeping low and following the creek's edge, where the smoke was thinnest. Behind her, she heard Weston cursing, then the sound of his footsteps as he followed. The coop was surrounded by smoke, but miraculously, the fire hadn't reached it yet. Callie threw open the door, herding the panicked chickens into crates and Weston loaded onto a small cart. The last hen was particularly stubborn, hiding beneath a nesting box. "Leave her," Weston urged, coughing violently. "We're out of time." "Just one more minute," Callie insisted, crawling into the smoke-filled coop. Her hand closed around the frightened hen just as a loud crack sounded overhead. Weston yanked her backward as a burning branch crashed through the roof, sending sparks everywhere. They barely made it out before the coop was engulfed in flames. Pulling the cart between them, they stumbled back toward the creek, eyes streaming, lungs screaming for clean air. The journey seemed endless, the weight of the cart growing heavier with each step. Just when Callie thought her strength would give out, they broke through the smoke into clearer air. Ranch hands rushed to help them, taking the cart, supporting them as they collapsed onto the damp grass by the creek. "You could have been killed," Weston rasped, his face black with soot, except for clean tracks where tears had cut through. "So could you," she countered weakly. "But we saved them. All of them." Despite his exhaustion, Weston laughed, a sound of relief and disbelief and something like wonder. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met." "You love it," she replied without thinking. His expression softened, his hand finding hers in the grass. "I love you," he corrected. "Every crazy, chicken-obsessed inch of you." And there, surrounded by smoke and chaos and the animals they'd risked everything to save, Callie finally said the words she'd been feeling for weeks. "I love you too." The fire was eventually contained, with damage limited to one stable, the chicken coop, and a portion of the lower pasture. It could have been much worse, everyone agreed. No lives, human or animal, had been lost, and structures could be rebuilt. In the days that followed, as they cleaned up and assessed the damage, something changed between Callie and Weston. The fire had burned away the last of their hesitation, leaving only the bedrock of what they'd built together: trust, understanding, and a love stronger than either had expected to find. 2 weeks later, as the first signs of autumn touched the trees around Silverwind, Weston took Callie to see the site of the new chicken coop. It was larger and more modern than the old one, with features Callie had only dreamed of. A spacious run, automatic feeders, and nesting boxes designed for easy egg collection. You designed this, she realized, noting how perfectly it matched. Ideas she'd mentioned in passing over the months. Weston smiled. With some help from an expert. The chickens, temporarily housed in a converted shed, would move in once construction was complete. As they walked around the half-finished structure, Weston seemed nervous, checking details and asking repeatedly if she approved. "It's perfect," she assured him. "Better than I could have imagined." "There's one more feature I want to show you," he said, leading her to a small garden area adjacent to the coop. In the center stood a wooden bench beneath a trellis that would eventually be covered with climbing roses. "I thought you might like a place to sit while you talk to your feathered friends." The thoughtfulness of it brought tears to Callie's eyes. This wasn't just a rebuilding of what was lost. It was a creation of something new, something made just for her. "I love it," she whispered. "Good," Weston said, taking a small wooden box from his pocket, "because there's something else I'd like to ask you." Callie's heart began to race as he opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a small golden egg. "I know you didn't come here looking for a future," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But I'd like to build one with you right here, day by day, egg by egg." Tears spilled over as she understood what he was asking. "Weston, I love you, Callie Monroe," he continued, taking her hand. "Your strength, your heart, your way with chickens." That drew a watery laugh from her. "I want to spend my life with you if you'll have me. Will you marry me?" Callie looked at the golden egg, then at the man holding it. The man who had helped her find herself again, who had shown her that love could be built on honesty and respect, who had never tried to rescue her, but had instead stood beside her as she rescued herself. "You don't need to give me gold," she whispered, echoing words she'd once heard in a dream. "You already gave me home." Weston's eyes shone with emotion. "Is that a yes?" Instead of answering, she threw her arms around his neck, kissing him with all the love in her heart. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and smiling, she nodded. "Yes," she said. "1,000 times, yes." He slipped a delicate gold ring from inside the egg onto her finger. It was simple and elegant, with a small diamond catching the afternoon light. As they walked back to the house, hand in hand, plans and dreams spilling from their lips, neither noticed the sleek black car turning into the long driveway of Silverwind Ranch. Inside sat a man in an expensive suit, a folder of documents beside him, and determination in his eyes. The simple life they'd built together was about to face its greatest test. The black car crunched up the gravel driveway, sending a flock of sparrows scattering from a nearby oak. Inside the vehicle, Bradley Thompson, of Horizon Development, checked his appearance in the rearview mirror before stepping out. His tailored suit seemed out of place against the rustic backdrop of the ranch, but he moved with the confidence of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. Callie and Weston were coming out of the main house when they spotted him approaching. "Mr. Blackwell," Bradley called, his smile practiced and cold. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Weston's expression hardened, his arm instinctively tightening around Callie's waist. "Mr. Thompson, I believe we concluded our business 2 weeks ago." Bradley's gaze flicked to Callie, then down to the ring gleaming on her finger. "I see congratulations are in order." "Thank you," Callie replied, her voice cool. She'd heard enough about this man to dislike him on principle. "Perhaps we could speak privately," Bradley suggested to Weston. "I have a new proposal that I think will interest you." Weston hesitated, then turned to Callie. "Would you mind?" "Not at all," she assured him, recognizing the importance of dealing with this man once and for all. "I'll check on the chickens." As she walked away, she heard Weston invite Bradley into the house, his tone cordial but distant. Whatever the developer wanted, Callie was confident Weston wouldn't be swayed. He'd already made his position clear. The temporary chicken enclosure, Callie found Maria refilling water containers. "Saw the fancy car," Maria commented. "Thompson back again?" Callie nodded, kneeling to check on a hen that had been injured during the fire evacuation. "Like a bad penny. Weston's handling it," Maria snorted. Man doesn't know when to quit. Did you hear what happened with the Carson place down the road? No, what? Horizon bought it last month, Maria explained, leaning on a fence post. First thing they did was fire all the staff, some who'd been there 20 years. Bulldozers moved in the next day, tearing up 100-year-old trees to make way for their resort. Callie frowned. That's awful. That's business, Maria shrugged. At least we don't have to worry about that happening here. Weston would never sell. The confidence in Maria's voice warmed Callie's heart. The ranch hands trusted Weston implicitly, and with good reason. He valued legacy over profit, tradition over trends. It was one of the countless reasons she loved him. An hour later, Weston found her in the vegetable garden, harvesting late summer tomatoes for Mrs. Jenkins. How did it go? She asked, noting the tension in his shoulders. Weston sighed, sitting on a wooden bench nearby. They've upped the offer to $30 million, and they're getting desperate or threatening. Threatening how? Thompson mentioned that several county board members are investors in Horizon, suggested there might be complications with our permits and water rights if we continue to refuse. Callie set down her basket, wiping her hands on her jeans before sitting beside him. Can they do that? Legally? No. Practically? They could make things difficult for a while. He shook his head. It's just tactics trying to wear me down. And are you worn down? Weston looked at her, his blue eyes serious. Never, but I do worry about what this means for Silverwind's future. For our future. Callie took his hand, the engagement ring catching the sunlight. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. His smile chased away some of the shadows. Together, he agreed. That's all that matters. The next morning, Callie woke to find Weston already dressed and on the phone, his tone urgent. She caught fragments of the conversation as she pulled on her robe. Can't be legal. Yes, I understand the position you're in. No, I won't be bullied into selling. When he hung up, his expression was grim. What's wrong? Callie asked. County inspectors are coming today. Something about concerns over our compliance with new environmental regulations. His frustration was evident. To regulations that were quietly passed last month, which our operation supposedly violates. Thompson's connections on the county board, Callie guessed. Weston nodded. They're playing hardball. The inspectors arrived mid-morning, clipboard-wielding, men and women who scrutinized every aspect of Silverwind's operations. They tested water samples from the creek, measured the distance between animal enclosures and water sources, and cited obscure codes that even Weston, with his meticulous attention to regulatory compliance, had never heard of. By afternoon, they presented Weston with a list of violations that would require costly modifications to bring the ranch into compliance. The most significant involved the creek that ran through the eastern pasture, the very land Horizon coveted. I have 30 days to address these issues, the lead inspector said, handing over the official notice, or face daily fines of up to $5,000. After they left, Weston threw the notice onto his desk in disgust. This is harassment, plain and simple. Those regulations were pushed through specifically to target operations like ours. Callie picked up the paper, scanning the list of supposed violations. Can you fight this? I've already called my lawyer, Weston replied. But legal battles take time and money. Meanwhile, they'll keep finding new ways to apply pressure. That evening, they gathered the senior ranch hands in the main house to discuss the situation. Frank, Maria, and the others listened as Weston explained the challenges they faced. I want to be clear, he concluded, looking at each of them in turn. I have no intention of selling Silverwind, but these legal maneuvers might make things difficult for a while. If any of you feel uncomfortable, with the uncertainty, I'll understand. We're not going anywhere, boss, Frank said firmly, the others nodding in agreement. We've weathered worse than some city slickers with clipboards. Their loyalty brought a smile to Weston's face. Thank you. That means more than you know. As the meeting broke up, Maria pulled Callie aside. How are you holding up with all this? I'm fine, Callie assured her. Just worried about Weston. He takes his responsibility to this place, to all of you, so seriously. Maria nodded. We know. That's why we'd follow him through hell itself. She paused. You're good for him. Before you came, he was all work, no joy. Now he smiles even on the hard days. The observation touched Callie deeply. He's good for me, too. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Weston wrapped his arms around Callie, drawing her close, against his chest. Marry me sooner, he whispered into her hair. She turned to face him in the darkness. What? We said we'd take our time planning the wedding, he reminded her. But life is uncertain. I don't want to wait. Let's get married next month, right? Here at Silverwind, the urgency in his voice concerned her. Weston, is this because of Horizon? Because if you're worried about... It's not about Horizon, he interrupted gently. It's about us, about knowing what matters most to me, and that's you. Whatever battles we face, I want to face them as husband and wife. His sincerity melted, her hesitation. A fall wedding at Silverwind, she mused. Simple but beautiful. Just like you, he said, kissing her softly. They began planning the next day. Mrs. Jenkins took charge of the food, Maria volunteered to handle the flowers, and Frank insisted on building an arbor for the ceremony, to be placed where the creek met the eastern meadow, Weston and Callie's favorite spot on the property. News traveled fast in small communities. By the end of the week, Callie was surprised to find an envelope addressed to her in the mailbox, postmarked from Chicago. Her sister's handwriting was unmistakable, bringing a flood of conflicting emotions. She sat on the porch steps, staring at the unopened letter until Weston found her there. Everything okay? He asked, settling beside her. Wordlessly, she handed him the envelope. He glanced at the return address, understanding dawning in his eyes. You don't have to open it, he said. I know, she replied. But maybe I should. With a deep breath, she tore open the envelope. Inside was a short note and a check for a substantial amount. Callie, the note read, I heard from Mom that you're getting married. I'm happy for you. What David and I did was unforgivable. This, money won't fix the damage, but it's yours. What I took plus interest. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to speak to me again. Love, Karen. Tears stung Callie's eyes as she passed the note to Weston. He read it silently, then folded it carefully. What are you thinking? He asked. Callie stared at the check in her hand. I don't know. Part of me wants to tear this up and send back the pieces. Another part wants to move forward, Weston finished for her, to let go of the past. She nodded, relieved that he understood. The money would allow me to pay off the last of my debts, maybe even take some courses at the community college, work toward that veterinary dream again. You should do it, Weston encouraged her. Not for Karen's sake, but for yours. Taking back what was stolen from you isn't the same as forgiving the thief. His wisdom, as always, cut through her confusion. You're right, she agreed. But I'm not ready to respond to her yet. You don't have to be, he assured her. Some bridges take time to rebuild if they can be rebuilt at all. The weeks leading up to the wedding brought both joy and tension. The county inspectors returned twice, each time finding new issues that required attention. Weston's lawyer filed appeals and complaints, but the bureaucratic machine moved, slowly. Meanwhile, Thompson made 2 more visits, each time increasing his offer. During his last appearance, his mask of civility finally slipped. You're being stubborn for no reason, Blackwell, he snapped, when Weston once again declined. This development is happening whether you like it or not. The only question is whether you'll profit from it or be crushed by it. Is that a threat? Weston asked calmly. Thompson straightened his tie. It's a reality check. The county board votes next week on rezoning the entire area for resort development. Your ranch will be an island in a sea of construction. Think about what that means for your water supply, your access roads, your way of life. After he left, Weston called an emergency meeting with his lawyer and financial advisor. Callie sat quietly as they discussed options, legal maneuvers, and potential outcomes. The situation was more serious than she'd realized. Bottom line, said Richard Wilson, the financial advisor, they can make operating this ranch so difficult and expensive that eventually selling becomes the only viable option. And if we fight? Weston asked. The lawyer, a gray-haired woman named Eleanor, sighed. We can fight and we might even win some battles, but these developers have deep pockets and political connections. It's an uphill struggle. What about buying the surrounding properties ourselves? Callie suggested. To create a buffer. Richard looked surprised at her input but nodded thoughtfully. It's a possibility, though it would require significant capital. The family trust, Weston mused. It's meant for preserving the Blackwell legacy. I can't think of a better use. That would deplete most of the trust, Richard warned, and there's no guarantee the strategy would work long-term. But it would buy us time, Eleanor added. Perhaps enough to build broader support, maybe get some conservation easements in place. By the end of the meeting, they had a plan, aggressive but clear-eyed, about the challenges ahead. What struck Callie most was how Weston included her in every decision, valuing her input even among these professionals. That night, they sat on the porch of his house, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery orange and deep purple. Despite the looming battles, there was peace in that moment, in being together, in knowing they faced the future as one. Are you still sure about marrying into all this? Weston asked, half jokingly. Most women don't sign up for legal warfare as part of their wedding package. Callie leaned against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. Most women don't find a man worth fighting for, she replied. I did. The morning of their wedding dawned clear and cool, a perfect October day. Callie woke in her cottage. Weston had insisted on following at least that tradition, spending the night before apart. Maria arrived early to help with her hair and makeup, bringing a bouquet of wildflowers gathered from the meadows of Silverwind. Something old, Maria said, handing Callie a delicate lace handkerchief. It was my grandmother's. Something borrowed, added Mrs. Jenkins, arriving with a pearl necklace. These were meant for my daughter's wedding, but she chose diamonds instead. They'd look lovely with your dress. Callie was touched by their kindness, these women who had become like family in the months since she'd arrived at Silverwind. Her simple white dress wasn't designer. She'd found it at a vintage shop in town, but its classic lines suited her perfectly. You look beautiful, Maria said softly as Callie stood before the mirror. Weston won't know what hit him. Outside, guests were gathering under the arbor Frank had built by the creek. It was a small wedding, just the ranch staff, a few neighbors, and Weston's niece Emma, who would serve as flower girl. No one from Callie's past was present. She decided against inviting her parents or sister, choosing instead to focus on the future rather than the painful history. Frank knocked on the cottage door, ready to walk her down the aisle in place of her father. His weathered face broke into a gentle smile when he saw her. Well, ain't you a sight, he said, offering his arm. Ready to marry the boss? Callie took a deep breath, her heart full. More than ready. The walk to the creek seemed both endless and too short. Guests turned to watch her approach, but Callie had eyes only for Weston, standing tall and handsome in a dark suit, his face lighting up as she came into view. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises to support and cherish each other through whatever life brought their way. When Weston slipped the wedding band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady, but his eyes shone with emotion. I now pronounce you husband and wife, said the minister, his voice carrying across the meadow. You may kiss your bride. The kiss was sweet and perfect, sealing their commitment amid cheers and applause. As they turned to face their guests, as Mr. and Mrs. Blackwell, Callie caught sight of a familiar black car parked at the far end of the driveway. Ignore him, Weston whispered, following her gaze. Today is ours. The celebration continued into the evening with a feast prepared by Mrs. Jenkins and music provided by a local band. They danced under strings of lights hung from the trees, ate cake by the creek, and received wishes and wisdom from those who had known Weston all his life. As the party wound down, Weston took Callie's hand and led her away from the guests toward a rise that overlooked the entire ranch. In the moonlight, Silverwind was a quilt of shadows and silver, peaceful and enduring. I have a wedding present for you, he said, handing her a small envelope. Inside, Callie found a deed to a 5-acre parcel of land near the rebuilt chicken coop. I don't understand, she said, looking up at him questioningly. Weston smiled. It's yours, to build your own veterinary practice if you want, or a chicken sanctuary, or whatever you dream up. Tears filled her eyes. But, with everything happening, with Horizon, that's exactly why, he interrupted gently. Whatever happens, this piece of Silverwind will always be yours. Our future is here, Callie. I believe that with my whole heart. She threw her arms around him, overwhelmed by his faith, in the face of uncertainty. I love you, she whispered against his chest. So much. I love you too, Mrs. Blackwell, he replied, holding her close. More than I ever thought possible. They returned to the party hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Together, the battle with Horizon Development stretched into winter. As predicted, the county board voted to rezone the area, but Weston's legal team found inconsistencies in the process that allowed them to file injunctions and appeals. The public hearings grew heated, with local farmers and ranchers rallying. Behind Silverwind, recognizing that their own lands could be next, Callie threw herself into the fight alongside Weston. Her background in animal science proved useful as they documented the unique ecosystem of the creek area, building a case for its environmental significance. She spoke at community meetings, wrote letters to officials, and even organized a petition that gathered thousands of signatures from people opposed to the development. In January, an unexpected ally emerged, a national conservation organization that took interest in the case. Their involvement brought media attention and additional legal resources. Suddenly, Horizon's tactics were under scrutiny, not just locally, but in regional news outlets. They're getting nervous, Eleanor told them during a strategy meeting. Thompson has reached out about a potential compromise. Weston raised an eyebrow. What kind of compromise? They'd scale back the development, preserve the creek area as a nature sanctuary with your name on it, and offer a reduced purchase price for just the eastern corner of your property. And in return, you drop the legal challenges and publicly support the modified project. Weston looked at Callie, seeking her thoughts. It had become their pattern, making decisions together, valuing each other's perspective. It sounds reasonable. On the surface, she said slowly, but I don't trust them. Once they have a foothold on Silverwind, what's to stop them from pushing for more? He nodded, his thoughts aligned with hers. Tell Thompson we appreciate the offer, but we're not interested in partial solutions. Silverwind stays intact. February brought a breakthrough when their legal team discovered that one of the county board members had failed to disclose financial ties to Horizon before voting on the rezoning measure. The revelation triggered an ethics investigation and further delayed the project. Thompson made one last, desperate attempt, showing up unannounced at their door with an offer that doubled his previous numbers. $60 million, he said, sliding a contract across the kitchen table. Think about what you could do with that kind of money, Blackwell. Buy a bigger ranch somewhere else. Live like royalty. Why keep fighting? Weston picked up the contract, studying it briefly before handing it to Callie. She glanced at the figures, then at Thompson's eager face and finally at her husband. We've talked about this moment, she said to Weston, about what we'd do if it came to this. He nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. We have. Thompson looked between them, confusion replacing confidence. What am I missing here? Nobody turns down this kind of money. We do, Callie said simply, tearing the contract in half and handing the pieces back to the stunned developer. Silverwind isn't for sale. Not for 60 million, not for 600 million. You're making a mistake, Thompson warned, his face flushing with anger. This place will never be the same once we build around it. We'll divert the creek, put up walls that block your view, run heavy equipment day and night. That sounds like harassment, Weston interrupted coolly. And I believe Eleanor would be very interested in recording those threats for the judge. He nodded toward the small device on the table that had been quietly capturing their conversation. Thompson paled, then gathered his briefcase with shaking hands. This isn't over, Blackwell. Actually, Weston replied, standing to show him out, I think it is. The ethics investigation into the county board member snowballed, revealing a pattern of corruption that extended beyond just the Silverwind case. By March, 3 board members had resigned. The rezoning vote was nullified, and the state attorney general had opened a formal inquiry into Horizon's business practices. Thompson disappeared from public view, reportedly taking an extended leave. From the company, Horizon's stock plummeted as investors distanced themselves from the scandal. The dream of a luxury resort in their quiet corner of the country faded like morning mist. Spring returned to Silverwind, bringing new life and renewed hope. Callie's chicken operation expanded, with specialty breeds producing eggs that local restaurants clamored for. She began taking online courses toward her veterinary degree, balancing studies with ranch work and her new role as Weston's partner. In all things, the fight had cost them, financially and emotionally. The legal bills had been substantial, and the stress had taken its toll. But they had emerged stronger, their commitment to each other and to Silverwind deepened by the challenge. One evening in early April, as they walked along the creek that had nearly been lost to concrete and golf carts, Weston surprised Callie with news. "The conservation easement was approved today," he said, his voice quiet with emotion. "This land will be protected forever, even beyond our lifetimes." Callie squeezed his hand, joy spreading through her. "That's wonderful." "There's more," he continued. "Remember that parcel I deeded to you as a wedding gift? The university has approved our proposal. We'll break ground on the small animal clinic next month. Students will do rotations here, learning about livestock and wildlife medicine." "Our dream," she breathed. "It's really happening." They reached the spot where they had exchanged their vows 6 months earlier. Frank's arbor still stood, now covered with new spring growth, a symbol of permanence amid change. "One more piece of news," Weston said, turning to face her. "I wasn't sure when to tell you, but—" He took a deep breath. "Mrs. Jenkins noticed you've been avoiding coffee lately and looking a bit green in the mornings." Callie's eyes widened. Was it that obvious? She'd only taken the test yesterday, had been waiting for the right moment to share the results. "You know?" she asked. Weston smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way she loved. "I suspected. Am I right?" In answer, she took his hand and placed it gently against her still flat stomach. "Due in November," she confirmed. "A fall baby like its father." The joy that transformed his face was everything she'd hoped for. He gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, which, to him, she was. "I never thought I could be this happy," he murmured against her hair. "When you walked into Silverwind that day, telling me my feed bins were inefficient, I knew you were special. But I had no idea how completely you'd changed my life." Callie laughed through happy tears. "From chicken keeper to wife and mother, it's not the path I expected when I came here looking for a fresh start." "Speaking of chickens," Weston said, his tone mischievous, "I found something for the nursery." From his pocket, he produced a small stuffed chicken, its plush feathers soft and yellow. "For our little Blackwell's first friend." Callie took the toy, running her finger over its embroidered eyes. "Perfect," she declared. "Absolutely perfect." As they walked back toward the house, their home, the setting sun gilded Silverwind in golden light. The horses grazed peacefully in the meadows. The chickens settled into their new coop for the night, and the creek flowed on, unchanged by the battles that had raged around it. Callie hadn't come to Silverwind looking for love or a future. She'd come for the job, something steady and quiet after the storm of betrayal and loss. What she'd found instead was healing, purpose, and a love stronger than she'd believed possible. "Penny for your thoughts," Weston said as they reached the porch. Callie smiled up at him, this man who had given her not gold, but home. "I was just thinking that sometimes the best endings are really beginnings in disguise." He kissed her then, a promise and a celebration wrapped in one. Behind them, Silverwind stretched out in the fading light, not just a ranch, but a legacy. Their legacy now, to nurture and protect for the child growing beneath Callie's heart, and for generations yet to come. And in the distance a rooster crowed, announcing the close of day and the eternal promise of tomorrow. The end.